Traveling the ether back to you, to a land so far away. I feel the distance in between.
If I took anything out of this episode, it would be that Ozen is, without a doubt, best girl. Hello everybody, I'm PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Made in Abyss episode review. Today we are going to be talking about episode 7, The Unmovable Sovereign. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you right now. This episode was hyped up a lot beforehand, so I went into this with incredible expectations, and I know that's never a good thing to do, but I did, because I was so excited for this episode. I was excited for what would likely be the Ozen confrontation. It was just so hype. But after finishing, I didn't love this episode, guys. I'm sorry. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't love it like I wanted to going in. And there's a few reasons for that, but I'll cover all of this in detail later on in the video, so don't worry. We're going to be covering this chronologically, like always. But it's just interesting that I did not love this episode after last episode, which, don't get me wrong, last episode was much weaker than this episode. This was still one of the best episodes we've gotten in the series. But something I did not expect after finishing that episode was how much people, especially manga readers, just did not like that episode. Or I got a few people who just straight up hated it. And like I said, it is a weaker episode for sure, probably the weakest episode, but I still didn't hate it. So I'm just wondering where people will be on this episode, like the general opinion, manga reader opinion, anime only watchers opinions. Like, I'm just curious to see what people think about this episode. So getting right into the beginning, we're given this brief but very effective exposition on the white whistles. Now, I don't know if this is every white whistle, but it showed 4 white whistles, and I assume that these are going to be 4 major characters later on. I mean, we've already met 2 of them, but yeah, we're shown the designs of 4 white whistles, and 2 of them are Ozen and Liza. And I just have to comment that these designs are fucking awesome. They're so cool. These are some of the coolest designs I've seen recently. And through various means, I already know about one of them, the dude in the armor or the robot suit or whatever it is. I think his name is Bondrude or something. I saw him when I was looking up things on Mouse, so I saw his name attached to that picture, so I know his name. I don't know anything else about him besides what his name is, and apparently he's a fucking incredible character. I don't know if we're even going to be getting that this season, but it was really cool to see his design in something other than the intro. And then we have another nameless white whistle whose design looks very inspired by the Plague Knight, or I guess maybe that's the other way around. I don't know which one came first. But yeah, we're shown these designs and given a brief explanation on how the white whistles work. Every white whistle is given a title that corresponds to their personality or different traits about them, which we already knew. We knew that a little bit back, I'm pretty sure. And also every white whistle has a relic associated with them that they themselves unearth, and they use that relic to their advantage, I guess. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the curse repelling vessel is Ozen's relic. Like, that is her relic. She says that Liza bought it, but I'm pretty sure that is her relic, because when she blows the whistle, it activates the vessel, which I think the whistle is attached to the relic that each white whistle has. Now, from this exposition, it makes me really curious what Liza's relic and what her title indicates. Like Annihilator, that just usually would indicate somebody just super bloodthirsty, super destructive, and maybe she was. Maybe in the Abyss she like turns into this cold-blooded murderer. It's just so weird that somebody that I see as like kind of a hero is dubbed an Annihilator. And I really am super curious on what Liza's relic actually is. I don't know if that's even been explored in the manga. Maybe it has, but I'm sure we'll get that information later on, and that's going to be super exciting to find out. After that short exposition scene from who we find out is Habo speaking about Ozen, we cut back to where we ended off last episode with Riko and Reg and Maruk and Ozen entering the room with the curse repelling vessel. I was right, that was the curse repelling vessel, although that wasn't really a hard guess to make. But we entered this room, and this is where things start getting a little crazy, especially with questions in my mind. And without spoiling, I hope you guys can help me understand some of this a little bit. Probably the biggest revelation in this episode was about what the curse repelling vessel actually does. Now, beforehand, we thought that being placed in this vessel allows you to just ward off the curse and be brought back up to the surface. And Ozen kind of just dispels that. She tells the truth about what this curse repelling vessel does. And apparently it brings the dead back to life. That's the short answer. There's probably a lot more to it. Ozen says that Riko was already dead when Liza gave birth to her. I guess because of the curse of the abyss just took effect on Riko immediately. And so she was already dead. So Ozen used her vessel to bring her back to life. But we find out that isn't all there is to being brought back to life. We find out that after being brought back in the vessel, things that are brought back eventually die again. And not only do they die again, but they all have this urge to go into the abyss, which is likely a side effect of the vessel coming from the abyss. And this would actually explain a lot about why Riko is so insistent to go down to the bottom of the abyss, despite the dangers, despite knowing that she will die. It may just be a curse of this vessel that's influencing her to go down further and further. And we also find out that this is what that monster from last episode was, is that Ozen put in like some meat that she had for dinner or something, and she put that into the vessel and it came back to life, but it died shortly thereafter and also was trying to get to the center, or not the center, but the bottom of the abyss. So the question is, how long does Riko have? And I have a question about this as well at the end. I'll save this for the end of the episode with another revelation that comes to be. But yeah, this is just super interesting and also makes me question what relationship Ozen has with Riko. In this episode, again, she says, "I despise you." And I wonder, why does she despise her? Just because she had to carry her up from the abyss? Like, it's fair to assume that Ozen saved Riko because that was Liza's child. She didn't want Liza's child to die. But why does she hate her? That's what I'm wondering. That might be more of a read between the lines thing, but I'm really curious what your guys' thoughts are. If there are no spoilers, go ahead and tell me what you think about that. After that, she examines Reg and starts talking about the Abods, or the robot, the cyborg species in general, and what they mean to the abyss. She starts talking about how some people see the abyss almost as God, and how if people knew about Reg's existence and the existence of something that can just easily go down to the center of the, why do I keep saying center? Bottom of the abyss, and make it back up no problem, how people would stop believing in the abyss or treating it as some deity, I guess. And relics from down in the abyss would also start losing their worth if people knew it's so easy to just go down and come back. And I just thought that was really interesting, because then she proceeds to say, robots or the cyborgs aren't listed because people haven't found them yet. They're not listed because they must not exist. And then she further goes on to say, oh, you don't have any of your memories, do you? That's good for me. So what? Does Ozen know about Reg's race, about where he comes from, about what he is? That's just insane to me. That means that she's been down to layer 6. Wiping out my previous theory that nobody's been to layer 6. Of course Ozen's been to layer 6. She's OP as hell. And from there we get into the bulk of what this episode is, and that is Reg versus Ozen. Like I just said, Ozen allegedly wants to kill Reg now, so he doesn't remember anything, and so he can't let people stop believing in the abyss. And whether or not that's a cover-up, or if that's just some excuse that she made, or if people actually treat this abyss as a god, I don't know. Like, she could have been making all of that shit up. But something tells me there's some truth behind her words. Now, this being the bulk of the episode, and this being what I was excited for pre-going into this episode, you would think, wow, why did you not love this episode if this is what the focus was and this battle just takes up most of the time? And it's tricky because I did really enjoy the battle between Reg and Ozen. It was completely one-sided, you know, Ozen of course destroyed him. But I really enjoyed the fight itself, the music especially. Kevin Pinkin! Oh my god, you're so good. My main two issues with this fight is, one, I felt like a lot of it was lazily animated, which I haven't felt that way a lot in this series. Like, for the most part, I felt it was high quality, but this fight in particular, for such a important and climactic confrontation, I expected the animation and the momentum of the animation to be a lot better than it actually was. Like, there were some shots that were just still frames that were shaking around with the camera pan, and that really took me out of some of these moments because I wanted to get into this fight. I wanted to feel the intensity, but the animation just didn't deliver. Like the beginning of episode 5 with that corpse sweeper attack scene, that had more consistent and quality animation than this entire fight. And that was just some random encounter with the corpse sweeper. Like, you would think that they would put more of their budget into this fight than they actually did. Second, I know I'm skipping a little ahead with this, but when you find out that it was all just a test, it kind of just erases all of the stakes for me that were involved in this fight. And I know that's the point, and I know it's not a bad thing. I've seen plenty of shows and fiction in general do this, where you're led on to believe something had stakes when it didn't. But for some reason, it just really took me out of it and kind of ruined that fight in retrospect, because even with the animation, I still felt some level of intensity with the music and the voice acting. And finding out later that it was all just pointless and Ozen isn't actually a crazy woman who wants to kill them, I don't know, it ruined that confrontation for me a little bit. And I know there will be tons of people saying that, like I said, that's the point. That's the whole purpose of that confrontation, is her testing them. And I know that. I can't explain it. It just did something to me where it felt lackluster compared to what I had been hearing beforehand. Like, I thought this is where shit got real, where like a white whistle is trying to kill them. Anyways, during this fight, we get probably the funniest shot of the entire episode, with Ozen just casually like flicking or poking Riko's forehead and somehow like almost destroying her to near death. I just think it's hilarious how overpowered Ozen is. Or maybe just how underpowered Riko is, I don't know. Once Reg has been sufficiently destroyed, we get Ozen putting on her full attire, her armor, which is super badass. And by the way, I did make a mistake last episode. That was not Liza's armor. That is Ozen's armor. For some reason, I just mixed up the two in that flashback that we got a few episodes back. But yeah, Ozen looks awesome in her armor. I love how atypical it is. Like, if you saw that armor, you would never expect what the person under that armor would look like. And we also learn about what Ozen actually did to attain all of the power that she has. She injected herself with something called the 1,000 Men Wedges, and she inserted it all over her body like 120 times. Now, at first, I thought this was the relic that belonged to her, but I think this might just be like some scientific thing that she injected into herself. But I could be wrong, and that is her relic, and Liza's relic is the curse repelling vessel. I don't know. Or maybe the curse repelling vessel isn't anybody's relic at all. Maybe you guys can clear that up for me in the comments. Once she puts on her armor and shows her secret of how powerful she is, she just completely destroys Reg. Reg tries to use his incinerator as a last-ditch resort to kill her. But of course, Ozen, isn't going to let anything like that happen to her, and actually points it at Riko, in which Reg has to do some quick thinking and quickly knock it out of the way of Riko, because apparently he can't shut it down after activating it. And we also learn that there's a trend with Reg's incinerator. After he uses it, he always passes out shortly after using it. And he passes out for around a couple hours or something. So now that that rule is in place, we know that he can't rely on that because he'll just pass out. He needs to learn to control it, and he needs to learn to withstand its power. After passing out, Reg wakes up and finds out, just kidding, it was all a prank. Ozen was just testing us all along. There's some really emotional dialogue between Riko and Reg that I loved. I love their voice actors so much. And we see Ozen's squad members for the first time. Which I have to comment, if these are supporting characters with no other purpose than to just be here right now, these guys have some really cool designs. Like, I hope these characters have more screen time in the future, because if they don't, those are just unnecessarily good designs for characters that are only in one scene. We also find out that, I was wondering last episode, where are all the cave raiders if this is Seeker Camp? And we find out that the next large group of cave raiders are coming in like 3 weeks. So right now the place is just Ozen and her squad. Now there's a lot of questions I want to ask you guys about this whole, oh, I was just kidding, I was just testing you scene. Now, Ozen says, oh, there is one thing I deceived you about, the grave. It was empty. Liza wasn't down there. Now, how much was Ozen faking all of this? What about the curse repelling vessel? Does it actually bring her back to life? Was Riko dead? Will she die soon because of that curse repelling vessel? Was she just making that shit up? What about this faith in the abyss as a god? Did she make that up? How much of the truth was she telling in that fight? Because from the way the anime worded it, it sounded like she was telling the truth about all of it, except for the grave. Which would mean, how long does Riko have to live? That's what I'm wondering right now. As she walks back to the main area of the camp, Ozen reminisces about Liza yet again, and we see a nice little flashback where we get child Liza and we get like somewhat more grown up Liza, where like she's already a black whistle. And there's not really much to say about that scene. I just really like that scene. But what I do think is interesting is that I always thought that Liza and Ozen were kind of on equal ground. But we find out that Ozen actually was a mentor to Liza and is probably the only reason why Liza became a white whistle so quickly in the first place. So that's just a really cool bit of background knowledge, especially when we find out what's coming next in the closing scene, where Ozen herself is going to be training Riko and Reg. And I say herself, but she kind of just Izumi Curtises it and strands them out in the forest and just says, survive for 10 days. And when the scene was playing, I wasn't really thinking that this would be a huge focus. I thought maybe, okay, so it's just going to be a little montage and then we get back into the canon material. Or maybe it just time skips it all together. But the next episode is called Survival Training. So I guess we're going to spend an entire episode dedicated to this training, which is cool, but it also makes me wonder where this series is going for a climax, because that means they can't spend too long on this. Also, it's time. Next episode, we're getting Nanachi. I swear we are. It has to be next episode. It's been way too long, and this deserted forest almost is the perfect opportunity to finally meet her. That's just me speculating, but it feels really likely that we're gonna meet her either next episode or maybe the episode after that. Anyways, that about wraps up this episode review. Thank you guys for watching. If you can, answer any of my questions in the comments or just give your thoughts on the episode. I'm really interested to hear what people think about this episode. And thanks again for all the support. I'm sorry if this review goes up a little bit later than usual. I had to record this later than I usually do. So if you're wondering, that's why the review is up a little bit late. Otherwise, tune back in next week when we cover episode 8, Survival Training. For the third time, thank you all for watching, and have a great day.
Travel